Everybody thinks that Jira is just for developers. But the truth is that Jira is hands down the most powerful project management tool for business teams. And in this video, I'm going to break down exactly how I set up Jira business projects to manage our own clients internally at grid.io. We're not going to overcomplicate anything. It's going to be a clean and scalable system that just works. Now, I'm also going to show you exactly what most teams miss when they try to make Jira work for project management specifically. And if you don't know who I am, my name is Josh. I am the founder of grid.io. And we've helped hundreds of teams just like yours implement Jira. Now let's jump into it. And by the end of this video, I promise that you'll never want to go back to your old tools like your spreadsheets, Asana, Monday, Smartsheets ever again. So the first step when we jump into Jira is to set up our brand new project. So the first thing we need to do when we jump in is to set up our brand new project in Jira. So I'll go over to the View All Projects tab. And in here, I have a Create Projects button on the top right. I'll click that. And the trick here is to actually look for a tab called Work Management. Now there are a couple of different flavors of Jira. There's Kanban, there's Scrum, and more of the agile methodologies of working. If you're just doing project management, I do recommend staying away from these because they have a little bit more of an interface directed towards development teams. So don't just look at Jira, look at specifically work management project types. I like to click on the work management tab, and then typically I'll start with a blank project. But if you find any of these intriguing and feel like they'll work for you, you can start with a template. I'll be walking through the blank project and building out things as I go, but feel free to start with something that looks like it's going to fit your needs, and you could build off of that as well. Using the blank project, I'll give this a quick name. And let's say I'm going to be working with Dunder Mifflin, which is going to be one of our clients for today. And I'll leave everything else blank and I'll click the Show More dropdown. Now, another very critical thing to change here is to make sure that it's a company managed project. Team managed projects are a lot more limited and have a lot less features available to you. And a lot of the things in the UI interface and the things that I'll be walking through won't be as applicable, although you could still use some of the elements that I'll be sharing. I just prefer to use team managed projects because they're scalable and they are a lot more robust for bigger teams. We'll make sure that the key is what we want. DM is totally fine. And I could also share projects, and I could also share existing settings with another project. And this will carry things like workflows, your screen schemes, so on and so forth over to this project. I'm not going to do that. We're going to start from scratch and create our brand new Dunder Mifflin project. So here we are, we just landed and we are looking at our board view. This is our very basic workflow that we get out of the box, which we will be tweaking next because we probably need something more complicated than just to do, in progress, and done. Now, if you're confused on how to actually create these projects and structure them within your own organization, the way that I like to think about it is I typically group them either by department, or in this case, we're sort of grouping them by client. And there's kind of those two different views and outlooks on how to actually structure and separate your projects. If you have a single team that's working on one single outcome, I often like to put that in its very own Jira project. That way, everything is sort of in its own place. And again, you can have the same teams working across multiple projects, and a client board is a perfect example of that. We may have multiple clients with the same exact implementation team delivering for those clients. But anytime I think of departments like marketing team, IT teams, HR teams, I'll pretty much always split those up into their own individual projects. So the first step I'm going to take is clean up some of the top level elements that I probably won't be using. Now, I personally don't really like to see all my attachments in one place, so I'll go through and just clean up some of these items like all work, reports, components, things that I know I'll pretty much never be using. You could always add these elements back if you'd like, but I prefer a cleaner and more streamlined way of viewing, and you could always bring these back later if you need them, but I like to have a more streamlined and easy way to view all of these elements at the top. Now, you could bring back all of these tabs later if you need them just by clicking the plus icon and clicking on one of those views. I like to keep my views very streamlined. That way I have very limited options and I'm not overwhelmed with what I could click on to actually manage my work. Just to highlight a couple of these, board view is probably my favorite and most used. This is your typical Kanban board where things move from left to right. The list view is great for pretty much anything in a hierarchy, which I'll show a little bit later as well. And then we have calendar view, which is great for scheduling, seeing start dates and due dates for your tasks on the calendar. Timeline is kind of similar, but you could also have a hierarchy here where you have your epics, your tasks, your subtasks all lined up and rolling up into each other. Forms is really great for end users to submit things into your board. So if you have other teammates who would maybe submit things onto your project, this is a great place to create the form and share that form with your company. Pages is great to link to different Confluence articles, and we do this all the time because it feels almost like a native integration where you can look at all of your pages within a specific space and you could interact with them, you could read them. It's a lot more seamless than bouncing back and forth between Confluence directly. Now let's jump in and modify our workflow. So I'll go to the three dots at the top and go to my project settings. In here, there's going to be a tab called workflows. And right now we just have two different issue types which this workflow applies to. And if we want to modify that, all we have to do is click the edit workflow button. This is going to be our out-of-box workflow that we were just looking at: to do, in progress, and done. I'm going to keep things very simple and maybe just add something for in review. That way, if any teammates or managers need to review something or check on something, they could easily go to that column and take a look at everything that's in it to review all the items that are pending their input. All we have to do is publish the draft. I'm not going to save a backup since I didn't really change that much in this workflow. And when we head back into our project, we now have to do, in progress, in review, and done. So you could add as many of those statuses, which then translate into columns, as you like. Rule of thumb is to keep these as minimal as possible. Less is more. So the less amount of columns you have, the less confusion your team is going to have. And keeping these titles very, very short. You don't want to make these super long to where half of the title in this column is going to be hidden because it's too long to read. So keep these very short. I like to aim for 1 to 3 words total. Now let's talk about actually creating your tasks and managing your hierarchy in Jira. So as we saw earlier, if I go back to my project settings, I have a section for work item, which shows me the work item types. And I only have task and subtask in this project. In order to change that, all I have to do is go to the actions panel at the top right and click edit issue types. And at this point, I could bring in more issue types into this specific project. I'm going to pull in epic and initiative. These essentially all roll up into each other where you have a subtask, then above that is a task, above that is an epic, and above that is an initiative. And we'll take a look at how all those interact within Jira in just a moment. But once I have all these set, I click the save on the bottom left, and then my issue types are added to my new project. Now let's start creating some of these and testing them out in our new project. So I'll create an initiative first, and I'm going to be creating an initiative for purchasing chairs for the office. And again, this is going to be our top level hierarchy in Jira. Any of the work that we're going to be doing to purchase the office chairs is now broken down from this initiative and going down. So let's go ahead and scope out this entire task. When I'm going to be purchasing new chairs, I'm going to add a child work item. And the thing that I need to do first is go and check and find new quotes for office chairs. So I created an epic to find quotes, which is now under my initiative of purchasing the chairs. I could go into the finding quotes and start adding individual tasks. So I'll add another child work item, and then I might add something like this. So we have a quote from company A, company B, and company C. And this is all under our find quotes epic. And the reason that we want to bundle these together in this way is that all the work is related and goes from the top down. These can all be separate tasks and separate things on your board, and that is absolutely one way you can manage your work. But I find this hierarchy to be very helpful within the views that I'll show you in just a moment. So now on our board view, we have our initiative, we have our epic, and we have our 3 individual tasks. Let's jump over to the list view and take a look at what that looks like here. So now we could only see one item, which is our initiative, and there's a little caret next to it. If we click the drop down, we see a little caret for the epic. Now, if I click the epic drop down, we see each individual task for getting a quote. So obviously this keeps things a lot cleaner. You don't see everything on your list view. Everything's tidied up into sort of the parent work items. And most teams that I've worked with and most teams that use Jira and similar tools have a lot of tasks with subtasks, with epics, with initiatives, and you could really add as many hierarchies as you like in Jira. That way things can roll up and be packed into one work item versus a whole bunch of them and mess up your entire project. One more thing that I wanted to touch on was the filter view. This is super helpful for myself, at least within the board views. If you only wanted to see the initiative, jump into that initiative and see all of the related work items. All you have to do is go to the filters tab. Inside of this filters tab, you could pretty much pull in anything you'd like: statuses, your work types, parents, your labels, your priorities. In this case, if I only want to see initiative, all I have to do is click the initiative filter. And now I have only the initiative showing up on my board. This filter will sort of save anytime I revisit this board later, but what I like to do oftentimes is to save a filter. And all I have to do is click the save filter on the top. I'll give this filter a name. All I have to do is click this save filter up at the top, give it a quick name, and save it. And now I could toggle this on and off whenever I'd like. So you could imagine if there's like 3 or 4 different filters stacked up into one saved filter, saves you a lot of little clicks to be able to find exactly what you're looking for. And if I have this list of work items here, I could click this filter and automatically only what I want to see shows up when I apply it. You could go through and star these filters, edit them, and then there's a couple of others out of box, including assigned to myself, as well as due this week that you can use, as well as due this week that you can't remove, but do come in pretty handy quite often. So now that you have your project managed in Jira effectively, things are clean, simple, and built for your business. The next step is to automate. That's where the real leverage starts to kick in. Check out this video next. It's going to be a full deep dive into Jira automation, and you'll learn everything that you need to know from A to Z, including auto-assigning tasks, building more complex workflows, and automations that scale without getting messy.